Radhe Radhe to all, and I hope everybody is doing perfectly fine. So today what we are going to discuss is ATCOM module. So what is ATCOM? It stands for your attitude, ethics and communication, which we suppose which we follow for our MBBS student. So these three things, because see, anywhere we go in any department or whichever field we are working, so first thing is like the attitude towards your work culture. That is important. So you should have a healthy attitude and disciplined one. Then you have to follow certain ethical principles while you are into your profession. Then communication skill, that is very important, how you convey or you talk to your patient, and how you, before you give any kind of a treatment, how you decide and how you what type of conversation you have with your patient. So that is a very important part in treatment and when you treat or see a patient. So these things matter the most. So today's topic of discussion, it's a current news, the today's news which has come up, that about passive euthanasia. So autonomy and decision making is the controversial, or you can say the hardest conversation which the doctor and the patient have together. So it is not one way, it is always a bilateral conversation. So when you talk to a patient or counsel a patient or treat a patient, so these principles or the bioethical principles, this you should remember every time when you are into your profession, especially what we are talking about is medical profession. So this ATCOM module, so these are given by the NMC. So according various modules are there. So today we are discussing 2.6, that is based on autonomy and decision making. So we'll discuss a case scenario and then we'll land up discussing the current news on passive euthanasia, which is a first of its case, which has been like the verdict has been passed by our Supreme Court. So this autonomy and decision making. So when you know about it, so what's the need to know about it? So this question can come up into your mind. So basically when you have idea about the bioethics principle like autonomy, decision making, beneficence, malfeasance, so all those things, non-malfeasance, so all those things help you do what? It helps you in identifying, discussing and defending your medico-legal, socio-cultural and ethical issues. So as they pertain to refusal of care, including your that one group may favor that do not resuscitate, another group would say that withdraw the life support. So you have to create, you have to know which group has the more weightage, and that it does not depend only on conversation, that depends on evidence also. So everything that you have to keep in mind while judging this for the motion or against the motion of passing a verdict of passive euthanasia so called, or any kind of decision when we talk about the patient care. So that is things, the motto of this lecture is that you are able to identify, discuss and defend the medical legal and socio-cultural and ethical issues or while dealing with patients. So you have to know your rights also, and simultaneously you have to explain and know the patient's right also, because patients also should know their power or their rights or what, because you cannot force any kind of treatment on patient. So you need to take proper consent from the patient, without which you cannot land up in giving the treatment of choice what you feel is correct. So always you have to keep your patient into priority. But yes, sometimes patients don't understand, so then you have to make them understand. So there are different ways to counsel. So all those things have to be dealt with, but under the fence of your bioethical principles that you should not forget while dealing with your patient. So this is basically a case. I'll just tell you in nutshell what the case is about. So this case has been given on the NMC site regarding this autonomy and decision making, that is the module 2.6, ATCOM module 2.6. So it's basically this case is telling a case of like it's a case of life machine. So the doctor who is seeing a patient, who she is 78-year old Mrs. Maithili, or so called ABC. It's not like personal or any like it is not it's an imaginary name you can say which has been put up. So she was living all alone in the apartment with her caretaker, and like which she was like very near to 3 streets near to your clinic. So basically it's like story of a doctor which he is telling about that female patient. So he must have taken history, that female must have gone to see the doctor for various ailments. So he is saying that patient is 78-year-old old lady who was living just nearby to his clinic. She is a widow and her only one son. So see, every line has some medical significance, medical legal significance that you have to remember. So his son emigrated to US 32 years ago. So he visits her only once a year. And once what happened, 1 year ago she had a fall, so her hip fractured badly, and she had hypertension, and which she was under controlled medications, and she continues to come to your clinic once and often. So she was attending the clinic very frequently. So but what happened, 4 months ago when this lady visited this doctor, so she was talking about her sister. So like she was also an old lady, so she was telling about her sister, that doctor, my sister died of metastatic breast cancer, but she suffered a lot. And they put a tube, like she was intubated, she must not have understood what is intubation and all. So she was intubated and she told that a tube was put into her throat to breathe. But even when her heart stopped, they started thumping her chest. Means doctors actually they will try to save the patient, so started giving CPR. So, but that the patient being a non-medico, they may not understand. So that lady, old lady, was frightened by the thought of having those kind of tubes and chest compressions, all those things. So then she was like, doctor, even if I go sick or fall sick, I don't want to go through all these procedure. So you promise me that you will not put tube inside me or give me these kind of thrust, because I don't want to live on machine. So that is a case on life machine. So she was against living on life support. So then that time you don't consider that this would happen in a while or something. So he assured her that nothing to worry, we'll see. And maybe the doctor thought that she was in trauma. She was in trauma that her sister died because of metastatic breast cancer, and she was not able to cope up with it. So, but every time she visited the doctor, she would bring up this issue to him that I don't want to live like a burden to anyone, and I don't want to have a miserable life as my sister. So all those things kept on, that doctor remembers it as a conversation. So one day suddenly this doctor gets a call from emergency room that Mrs. Mathili, so on called, you can say Mrs. ABC. So she has been admitted by the caretaker in the emergency room, and she had fever, shortness of breath, and she was brought hypoxic to the emergency room, and then they intubated her. Chest X-ray revealed a large pneumonic patch. Lab testing revealed your hyponatremia. So all these things are there. So these all things, when you see the medical condition, what a doctor would do? He would take all the measures to save the life of a patient. Right. So all those intubation and everything was done. Now let's see what happens. Now, when this doctor went to see the patient, and she was drowsy, intubated, and she was not into her normal senses. And then nurse tells the doctor that sometimes she's lucid and sometimes she's not able to recognize her son also. Then she points out towards the tube which was inserted into her mouth. She's seeing the doctor and telling him, remove it. Like pleading gesture, like please remove this tube, please. But then her son also, he got a call from the emergency room and he was traveling to Singapore. He cancelled his flight and then came back to his mom, and he was very distressed. So like any other son, he said, please save my mom, I would do everything possible to her to save her. So but then doctor asked him, had your mother ever said you that she doesn't want to live on life support? Had this discussion been there with you ever before? Because he wanted to know the right, like what patient said to his son. Because see, your near and dear one will be able to take decision for you. So doctor cannot take the decision for the patient until unless they have their kin and near and dears around. Because but then what the son said, he said ki nahi, whenever she used to call us, then she was very cheerful, she used to ask about the grandchildren, but never she talked about her health, and never she said anything that she doesn't want to be on life support. So now you're aware of the condition, what the case, right? Old lady doesn't want to go on life support because of all the miserable conditions she had seen in her sister. Son stays away in US. Now suddenly he pops in and says he wants every measures to be taken to protect his mother. So now what we are discussing this case is, like, we need to know the patient's extent of patient autonomy. We want to know elements in decision making like competency and capacity. So whenever some decision is taken, so it has to be taken, we have to know that the person who is taking the decision is competent enough, or is he in the capacity or mental capacity that he can take his or her own decision. Then surrogacy, if the patient cannot take any other person who can take decision on her or his behalf, then comes autonomy versus beneficence. What is important? Even see, autonomy is patient's right, and beneficence is any act of doctor which is in favor of the patient. So even if some action of a doctor is in favor of the patient and patient does not want it, you cannot go for it. So that is the autonomy of the patient. You can go in certain, obviously there are always exceptions, but overall what's the meaning it? Then how much family wishes, how much does the family wish count? Matlab, what is the important relevant, whether family would be able to take care of the person, patient or not. Then you have your legal, ethical and social aspects of do not resuscitate. Do not resuscitate means don't kill but don't save. So there is a huge difference in both the words. Kill is like your active euthanasia. You are making the person die. Passive is you are removing the life support and allowing the person to die. So means you are not taking any measure to save the patient. You are just letting yourself down. So that is the basic difference between active and passive euthanasia. So it's a very well-known case of Aruna Schonborg in 2010 only. So you all must be aware. So what happened on 17 December 2010? The Supreme Court they admitted the plea to end the life made by activist journalist. She was a nurse in hospital, and what happened? And she was in a vegetative condition for years, right? So in 2010, an activist journalist Pinky Vinani she sought report on the Shanbog's medical condition from the hospital in Mumbai and government of Maharashtra. So in she put a case for it that let's end her life, for her, like to end the miserable life what she's going. She's just lying in a vegetative state for years. So in January 2011, a three-member medical panel was established under the Supreme Court's directive. So, but remember, she was a activist journalist. She was not related to Aruna Schonborg. So, after examining the case, the panel concluded that though she met most of the criteria of being in permanent vegetative state, but no decision was given for her whether her life should be put to an end or not. So on 7th March, Supreme Court made a landmark judgment and set of broad guidelines was issued by our Supreme Court legalizing passive euthanasia in India. These guidelines for passive euthanasia are like basically what I told. It's a decision to withdraw the treatment, nutrition or water. You cannot actively kill the patient. Euthanasia is mercy killing, right? I don't want to live. Suppose patient is having cancer. He or she doesn't want to live, but you cannot give him something like you actively kill the patient. No, this is passive. That would be active. That is not allowed. That is illegal in our country. So decision to withdraw the treatment, nutrition or water. You can say support system को अगर आप हटा दो, तो then the patient automatically will die. So establish that the decision to discontinue life support must be taken by parents, spouse, or if they are not there, any other close relative, or even if the close relatives are not there, it's fine, by a next friend who is very close to the person. He or she can also take the decision. So there is no need that parent, spouse or any close relative would only take. But yes, they have to establish that yes, this person is very close to the person who wants to go for passive euthanasia. They can go for it. So but that needs to be documented. Yes, this person was very close to the patient. So decision also requires court approval. So who is making a plea? Then how the court approves the case. So all these medical documents and all the data and everything is retrieved, and then the board decides what to be done. So what happened? The activist journalist jo thi, when she put up the plea, judgment, though court said that passive euthanasia is legalized, but in this case the court declined to recognize Vinani as next friend of Aruna Schonborg and instead treated the Chem hospital staff the next friend. the staff, hospital staff who was taking care of her, she was found to be like more close ki, yeah, she can take decision for her. So court at least agreed, but she did not want the life support to be removed. So Virani's petition to withdraw life support was declined. However, the court further stipulated that Kem Hospital, if the hospital staff would have done the plea, then the Bombay High Court would have given the option to withdraw the life support, and they said even if they change their mind in a course of time, that the hospital staff thinks that yes, her life should be put to an end, then she can put a plea, and then court would grant her the passive euthanasia. So now when you are knowing about the case, was Aruna Schonbox living in agony more valuable than her dying with dignity? So dying with dignity versus living in agony. So it's a topic of debate. So who would assess it? Because the person who is lying in vegetative state they cannot speak up. They cannot say they're thinking that what they want. So who would decide for them? So that is why the Supreme Court said it's next friend, kin, jo bhi hai, whoever is in the direct contact with the patient, so who is very close to the patient, can put up a plea, and then doctors, lawyers, and all those judgment would be passed, seeing all the conditions of the patient. Similarly, recently we acknowledged a case of Harish Rana's. His condition was even worse than Aruna Schonbock. This is a case of a young boy who was doing his engineering from Chandigarh University. He actually fell off from fourth floor of hostel and then went after major succumb. He actually had major injuries, and he went into a complete vegetative state with quadriplegia, no response. So it would happen in 13 years back, in 2013, I guess. And then many requests would have been put up, like his parents went for like they put up a plea for passive euthanasia for this guy, and then but court reserved its order after hearing both the sides. Like he has been in a state of complete inertness. His eyes did not move. He was not responding to any kind of danger. So the advocate, he submitted that he had been in an irreversible and incurable state with 100% disability since the accident, with no hope of recovery. So they requested that court should proceed to make a final decision on withdrawing the life support. And Schonbock case that we were discussed now, she was in vegetative state for 42 years. But though final verdict was not given in her case, that because there was no next kin who would take the on whom the court would like reside. Yes, he or she can take decision for her. Though the activist journalist, she fought a lot, but she was not considered as a next kin for her. So she lied in vegetative state for 42 years. So just think, living dead for 42 years, is it justified? That is the topic of discussion. So here today Supreme Court passed the justice for Harish Rana, allowing his parents to give passive euthanasia to the boy. So end of life verdict. So today Supreme Court said passive euthanasia is allowed for Harish Rana after 13 years in a vegetative state, complete 100% disability state. So we will discuss about the case in a while. So just what are the bioethical principles when you have to know about this? See, you cannot just bump on explaining things without having a basic knowledge. So what are bioethical principles when we are into patient's treatment? So broad study of what we ought or ought not to do. So what we are supposed to do or what we are allowed to do, that we have to be very clear. Then you have to be very clear about what is right and wrong for your patient. What is good or bad for your patient according to our beliefs and morals. That these all things comes under your ethics. So generally bioethics is used to more narrowly refer to the biomedical ethics. हम medical terms में अगर हम बात करें, it's a biomedical ethics. So which is concerned with the interaction between ethical principle and health. So important जो bioethical principles होते हैं, first is your autonomy, that is patient should be able to make informed decision regarding their healthcare without undue external influence or coercion. So it means what? Patient has the right, self right, you can say. If I go and say, my doctor says to me, you have gallbladder stone and you need a cholecystectomy, fine, then it is on me that I would like to go for gallbladder surgery or not. So if I say I don't want a cholecystectomy, no doctor can force me to undergo cholecystectomy. So it's a fair, simple example. And but yes, being doctor, he or she would explain me that, ma'am, if you don't undergo surgery, then these stone can create complications. So you can land up in some other fatal condition. So better to get removed. So if I am able to understand, then even then I think, yeah, I don't need a surgery. Then it's like a self, my power as a patient to say no to it. However, but as the doctor, you have to try your best to counsel the patient. You cannot let go your patient without giving them proper advice. Patient ने मना कर दिया, मैंने कहा हाँ ठीक है कोई बात नहीं आप मत कराओ. ये attitude, this is ATCOM, attitude, ethics and communication. So ethics, you know that it is patient's right. You have to communicate to the patient ki what is good for you and what is bad for you. So that you have to explain to your patient, because patient is not a medico. So you cannot think he or she will understand the treatment protocol. So you have to make them understand. The second point is your beneficence. Any act of doctor should be in good faith of your patient. As a doctor, you must know that every action of yours should be in favor, or your patient should get benefit from your each and every action. Then non-maleficence. You should be away from all the malpractices. That you cannot do any harm. See, if I don't know a treatment, I will straight away say to my patient, I don't know this, you can go to this specialist doctor. It's very humble request to all the physician out. Don't try to be specialist or super specialist of your own. Do what is possible at your own setting. Just refer the patient. If you cannot treat, don't go into a wrong treatment just thinking or having an ego that yes, I know everything, I can treat this patient. You cannot play with the life of patient. Any act of doctor should not be in negative effect or should not give any negative effect to your patient. So that is non-maleficence. Better don't do it except that you are not a specialist of this and then refer the patient. Justice. You cannot see a patient according to caste, color, creed, sex. So that you have to give equal opportunity to all your patients, and your all patients should have access to medical treatment free from any kind of immoral discrimination. Then two other principles are there for biomedical ethics. Four we have read: autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. Then you have confidentiality. Patients, when they are discussing about their ailments, you have to keep their talks private. So keep it private until it is important. Obviously, there are exceptions. You have to inform. Suppose a jail inmate, he comes, prisoner hai. If he has some kind of contract, like any kind of disease which can spread to other prisoners, so you have to inform the jailer or anywhere. So that is important. If some patient is that he's not into his normal mental condition, so you have to explain to you have to disclose the fact to his or her relatives. Then reproductive liberty. Patients, they have the right to procreate independently of their health issues and history. So you cannot force them that you are having this genetic abnormality, don't go for kids. This also you cannot say them. So it's all their right and their idea. So all these ethics you have to follow. You can just tell them. So now coming to this case. So this is how a court decides. Basically, that is the hardest conversation when a court, the relatives or the near friends, they have to decide, and the lawyers, they have to sit and decide whether this patient's life should be put to an end. So that is the hardest conversation among all those people. In this case, suppose 32 now, he was in 2011 in the Aruna Schonborg case when Supreme Court legalized passive euthanasia, right? Now this Harish Rana case, he was 32-year-old, right? And he has been out of this 32-year-old for last 13 years he had been in vegetative state after the fall from the fourth floor. So now after that he was into an irreversible non-progressive brain damage. Now he would not agony of this decision actually led to end of the agony of the parents. Parents tried their best for last 13 years, keeping their economic condition at stay, fighting to save their child, fighting to in a hope that their son would recover at certain point, but it was taking a toll on them. So when this economic conditions was getting worse for the family as a whole, so it was being parents also, it was a difficult decision. Mother, father, like my father's petition was, he was 65, his wife was 60 years. So how they would take care of their son? So death release for our son. So this is a very, actually when you think it emotionally, it is a very sad thing. But now they also think that after fighting for last 13 years, is it justified to see their children lying in vegetative state, quadriplegia, no hand movement, no eye movement, all four limbs paralyzed? So this is actually a very sad or deepest pain a parent can have, watching a child go in front of them for whom they have fought for last 13 years. The child was in coma for last 13 years. So Supreme Court's verdict to the parents was you are letting your son live with dignity. Live with dignity. Like, so it's a very hard decision, but yes, I would say a correct decision, a justifiable decision when I am allowed to give my opinion. So there is, as I said, it's a balance. Some evidence can go up, some evidence can come down, but how a fall can change a family's fate. So that is like falling from a fourth floor and then going totally into a vegetative state, 100% disability state for last 13 years, still parents fighting for the kid. So it's actually a commendable job. But yes, when they are also towards the like in elderly age and they are not able to fight so much because of their economic condition, and especially when you don't see any response in the patient. So that is the most important criteria. He was a like when any positive improvement, if the doctors notice in his neurological behavior or neurological response or movement, so this decision would not have been taken. But last 13 years, no response from the patient after all kind of treatment. So father finally he thanks the Supreme Court for this humane decision, and this is the first case where a verdict for passive euthanasia has been passed in our country. So initially I told you what is the difference between active and passive euthanasia. Active is like directly you're taking action to end the life of the patient. It's illegal in our country. Active euthanasia is a big no to our country. Big no. Active. So active would be no and passive. Now Supreme Court says it's a yes. And just to tell you all, active euthanasia is legalized in few countries. Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Canada, Spain, Colombia, New Zealand, and all the 6 states of Australia. So here active euthanasia is legalized, not in India. So this case is the first legal recognition of passive euthanasia in our country. So thank you so much for your patient hearing. Kindly like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel Patho with MK. Have a great day.